Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Grotko. I am half of the Presidium of Kingsway Jewish Center with my cohort, Yitzhak Elman. Me and my lovely wife, Vada, were born in Brooklyn. Both our parents were Holocaust survivors, and we appreciate more than anything living in the city of Brooklyn, New York, and having the freedom of what our parents did not have growing up. On behalf of Kingsway, we want to welcome Mayor Blasio here this morning and thank him for helping keeping the city of New York free of anti-Semitism. I proudly introduce to you Mayor Blasio.
Thank you. Thank you. Jeff, I want to thank you for all that you have done for the community. I want to thank you for everything, all the good that the Kingsway Jewish Center does for this community. I know, you know from personal experience, what the scourge of anti-Semitism means because of your family's horrible loss in the Holocaust and what you have experienced personally. And I want to tell everyone, we're here because this is a community in New York City that has suffered the experience of hate crimes, including recently. This is a community where Holocaust survivors live. And this is a reminder to all of us, and it's a very sad reality, but anti-Semitism is alive and well in this world, in this city, in this country, and it must be stamped out once and for all. This is not a small thing. People right here in this community in Brooklyn have seen in their own lives what happens when anti-Semitism goes unchecked, when people stay silent, when the authorities don't do anything. In countries that families here came from, they watched complacency, silence. They watched opportunism that led to horrifying results. This is why if anyone tries to dismiss anti-Semitism, if anyone tries to suggest that it's not such a big problem, they need to look at history, not just a little bit of history, 2 millennia of history of bias and discrimination against the Jewish people in countries all over the world. And unfortunately, we're still grappling with it here. They're still grappling with it in Europe. It never went away. And we have to be blunt about it. It never went away. And we're dealing with it to this day, and it's very dangerous. And the history tells us if you take it lightly, people will be hurt and people will die. And we will not allow that in New York City. This place is proud of being a city for everyone. A city for everyone, a city that respects everyone. We also are the city with the largest Jewish population of any city in the world. And we have to be a beacon. We have to be the example to the entire world of what it means to protect our Jewish community. This is what we're here to say today. New York City will never be silent in the face of hatred. And I want this to be very clear, because again, it's personal for a lot of people here. Right here in this community, a 77-year-old woman woke up one day to find swastika scrawled on her front door. Someone who has been a part of the community, lived her life, given to others, and is pained, horrified to see the very symbol associated with the slaughter of 6 million people right here in Brooklyn in 2019. So this is not just about saying we don't like it. This is about making very clear we will not tolerate any form of anti-Semitism. There will be consequences. You're going to hear from Chief of Patrol Rodney Harrison in a moment. But I want to give this message loud and clear. To anyone who has hatred in their heart, and they're thinking of going out and scrawling something on a subway or a front door, they're thinking of attacking an individual because of what they're wearing or because of the language they speak. If you do that, we will find you, we will arrest you, and you will go to prison, period. We are here united. And I want to thank the leaders of the community because they every day are fighting this anti-Semitism, and they have stayed strong. Again, everyone at Kingsway Jewish Center, and a particular thanks to Rabbi Tokayer. My apology, Rabbi Tokayer. Also, we're joined by students from one of the great institutions in Brooklyn that prepares the next generation of leaders who will continue to create a more just world. I want to thank all the students from Yeshiva Flatbush who are here with us. I want to thank the elected officials who have stood strong. When the elected officials in the community see an act of hate, they are quick to call upon the city and to demand action on behalf of the community. We depend on them to help us know what we have to do to make things right. I want to thank her district Assembly Member Helene Weinstein for her leadership. Assembly Member Simcha Eichenstein, thank you. And Council Member Kalman Yeager, thank you. So let's talk about the fact. We were horrified as New Yorkers, as Americans, at what happened to the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. It was the worst, most violent anti-Semitic attack in the history of the United States of America. And it wasn't something that happened 100 years ago in history. It was something that happened in our time, and that is a wake-up call to the danger. What we saw happen in Paris over the last few years. We're talking about the places where we thought things like this couldn't happen. And this is why we're on full alert. Even in our city that does so much to fight anti-Semitism, this year we see sobering things happening in our communities. The rise in hate crimes. Through February 10th of this year, 47 hate incidents in New York City compared to 27 during the same period in 2018. Now, here's what we should all be particularly concerned about. Over 2/3 of those hate crimes targeted the Jewish community. Something is wrong, and it must be addressed. It must be addressed in every part of our society, in our schools, in our neighborhoods, in our homes. We have to make sure that everyone hears a message of mutual respect and that voices of hate are confronted. But we also have to be very clear that sometimes the best way to get the point across is to show the extent of the consequences. So I want to be very clear. It's illegal to scrawl any kind of graffiti in New York City. But if you scrawl hate graffiti, you're going to go to prison for a longer time. It's illegal to assault anyone in New York City. But if that assault is based on hatred, if it is a hate crime, you will spend years more in prison. I want people to understand this. Years of your life, you will be sent to prison if you assault someone based on bias. This is not a joke. This is serious stuff. And the pain this community feels, and I've heard it from so many people, the pain this community feels right now is intense and it's palpable because people know what hatred leads to. Every family in this community, in one way or another, can tell you the story of how hatred harmed their family, took their loved ones from them. And I understand that fear. I understand why it's so personal. Every New Yorker should understand that. Every New Yorker should be part of solving this crisis. When we say, if you see something, say something, that's not just about terrorism. That's about anything that would tear us apart. If you see someone committing an act of hate, report it to the NYPD immediately. If someone talks about wanting to commit an act of hate, tell the authorities immediately, because if we do not confront it, it will only spread. And we can't allow that. I want to say one more thing before turning to Chief Harrison and to two of the most prominent leaders of this community. We need to understand the place of Israel in world history because it connects here. We need to understand that Israel was created not just as a dream of a homeland for people who had lost their homeland, but also as a refuge from a world filled with hate. Now, this is a government gathering, but it doesn't stop me from making a bipartisan statement.
Thank you.
A bipartisan statement. Democrats and Republicans with equal fervor need to say, Israel must exist so the Jewish people know they are always protected. And you could say, well, wait, no, it's different now. That was back then. It's different now. This is not 1948. We're in an enlightened time. Well, I say, if you think we're so enlightened, why did we see those attacks in Paris, the city of light? If we're so advanced, why were innocent Jewish seniors killed in the Tree of Life synagogue? Why are hate crimes rising in the most tolerant, diverse city on earth? Because there's a problem, and we have to get to the root of it. Israel is just as necessary today as ever, and it must be protected. And I want to say again on a bipartisan basis, and I am a progressive and I say this proudly, you can disagree with the government of Israel on any particular matter. Everyone has that right. But don't do anything that attacks the fundamental right of Israel to exist. And maybe some people don't realize it, but when they support the BDS movement, they are affronting the right of Israel to exist, and that is unacceptable. As I turn to Chief Harrison with deep appreciation for his work and the work of all the men and women of the NYPD to protect this community, and it is a labor of love in the NYPD. The NYPD understands they need to be guardians of all of us, every community, and they take hate crimes very, very seriously. I think it's exemplary what the NYPD does. But the way this city operates and the way the NYPD operates follows on the words of one of the greatest voices of the last century, Elie Wiesel, when he said, "The opposite of love is not hate, it is indifference." In this city, we are not indifferent. We are strong, we are passionate in our defense of the community. And we see it every day when someone does something violent, when someone does something biased and discriminatory and hateful, and the next thing they find is an NYPD officer there to arrest them, to show them there will be consequences. I want to bring forward Chief Rodney Harrison.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I want to thank the elected officials for being here today. I want to thank the community leaders as well, my fellow police officers for their great support. And thank everybody for being here this morning. Hate crimes are a matter that we take very seriously here in the NYPD. And as of Tuesday, we've seen a spike, 49 reports of hate crimes throughout the city. This is an increase of 81% over the same time last year. And anti-Semitic crimes make up almost 2/3 of that, where we've seen 32 crimes citywide. But I want to stress, hate has no place in New York City. And if you commit a hate crime, we will catch you, and we will prosecute you through the fullest extent of the law. This is why we investigate every one of these cases thoroughly. Our precinct detective squads will always investigate every single possible hate crime. And our hate crimes task force, led by Deputy Inspector Mark Molinari, will conduct thorough investigations. And as we identify trends, we deploy resources we need to address the situations. We'll let our precinct officers know of locations that they should pay attention to while they're out there on patrol. We're putting more police officers in the areas of concern, and will continue increased coverage to wipe out these incidents from occurring. We'll train our officers to stay vigilant with any potential hate crimes developing. And just as important, we'll be transparent and keep you informed of issues as they arise. Because no one's more important resource than you, the people of New York City. You know the places you live and work deeply, and we want you to know that when you see anything that needs our attention, we're here to help. Our crime prevention officers, our neighborhood coordination officers will work with you to develop security plans for your cultural centers, your houses of worships, your places of business. Our detectives will review security camera footage to enhance the cases, and our patrol and community affairs officers will provide additional security at events that you may have. I know many of you are doing these things already, but it's important to stress so we can help you as much as we can. Thanks to the resources we received from Mayor de Blasio and the City Council, neighborhood policing is in place citywide. You have a neighborhood coordination officer, NCO, dedicated to your specific part of the precinct, and they're willing to meet with you to find out any concerns that you may have. And if you feel that they're not helping you or your community, please let us know. It's our job to make sure every New York City resident feels safe in this city. And our tens of thousands of officers and detectives and supervisors are ready to work with you to make that happen. Thank you very much.
I want everyone to just recognize something very powerful in the words of Chief Harrison. Not only are we going out throughout the community to make sure the security plans are in place, not only do we have more officers on the street, and thank you to the City Council again, we have more officers so we can deploy more officers to places that need that extra protection, extra presence. But he just said, if you don't feel it's enough, let us know and we will do more. Think about the world we're living in and think about the history of Jewish people. How few times any government ever said, if you don't feel safe enough, tell us and we will do more. unfortunately, is a rare experience in the history of Jewish people all over this world. But here in New York City, we want to make clear, we will not allow fear to win. We will never allow fear to win. People have to know they are safe and they are respected. With that, I want to turn to someone that I have known for decades, and I think people all over this city see him as one of the great voices of truth and a great leader of the community, Rabbi Michael Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Jewish community is very well known as an influential community. But we're also, and we feel it in our heart, a very vulnerable community. Not every family, Jewish family in New York, are descendants of Holocaust survivors. But all Jews feel the pain, feel the anguish of those who survived the Holocaust and continue to carry the legacy of those who perished in the Holocaust. It is very heartwarming, Mr. Mayor, to know that you are here as the leader of this city of more than 8 million people, with more than 1 million Jews among them, looking after our interests, ensuring our safety, and making certain that we have a future in this city, a city that is so diverse and yet should be so embracing. As Chief Harrison indicated, it's not been so embracing of late. And to have the Chief Executive Officer of the City of New York stand at this podium and to say that hatred will not be tolerated in this city is very comforting for those of us who live here together with our families. Whether you're young, whether you're an adult, whether you're a senior, whether you wear a kippah, a yarmulke on your head, or a Jewish star on a chain around your neck, that should be for us a sign of pride, not a target for anti-Semites. Mr. Mayor, you quoted from Elie Wiesel. I too want to quote from Elie Wiesel. He once said that he thought that the memory of the Holocaust would shame the anti-Semites and those who boast anti-Semitic opinions. That's what he thought. But Elie Wiesel acknowledged that he was wrong. And he said, it seems that some people, are no longer ashamed to be anti-Semitic. That's our role. That's the role of the mayor. That's the role of all the elected officials. That's the role of the police department. And that's the role of all of us who have positions of leadership here in New York, whether Jewish or non-Jewish. You could eliminate the word anti-Semite and insert the word hater. It means the same thing. We need to shame those who hate. We need to make certain that those who hate know that they're going to be arrested, they're going to be prosecuted, and they're going to be put away for a long time. Once again, I want to thank the mayor for convening us here today. Mr. Mayor, you've been a city council member, you've been the public advocate, now the mayor. All too often, same thing is true about many of us here in positions of leadership. We've stood on street corners, we've stood here or there on the steps of City Hall, condemning acts of condemning acts of hate. Enough already. As you said, an end to hatred in New York. God willing, that will be the future of this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Is our young friend okay over there? All right. Good. He's okay? All right. I want you to... We'll get him water. There's water right behind him, in fact. Let's get him that water. I want you to hear from one of the great voices of reconciliation, because we're going to continue to educate, continue to change minds and hearts, but at the same time, as Michael Miller said, make sure there are very clear consequences for those who hate. That work of trying in a difficult world to keep healing, to keep moving forward, one of the great leaders of that work is Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll give you some height, Rabbi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And firstly, thank you to the Kingsway Jewish Center. We have one president in our country. Kingsway has two presidents, which says much about the growth of this community. So I'm very, very inspired. Mr. Mayor, a few weeks ago, you brought us together, leaders of different faith constituencies, to demonstrate that we can have unity and diversity coexist and sharing our differences with one another. So thank you for what you've done today, but thank you for what you've done throughout your history as a public leader. I come here today as a child of Holocaust survivors as well. My parents lost 5 children during that horrific period. When I was bar mitzvahed in a synagogue, I insisted that 5 pictures be put on 5 chairs because those kids couldn't have a bar mitzvah. I also want to say that the rabbi of the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh recently asked, when we said never again after the Holocaust, was there a question mark or was there a period after the statement? I think, in light of what is going on, there is still a question mark after never again. And I would add the following. This past week, we also saw hatred in Washington, D.C. If it is wrong for David Duke to say these things, it is wrong for Ilhan Omar to say these things. And to those who want to speak about Benjamins, we use our Benjamins to build hospitals, universities, and schools for all people. You walk into a hospital in Israel, you walk into a university in Israel, and what do you find? Arab students and Arab teachers, Arab patients and Arab doctors. There's room for everyone. We use our Benjamins to help Syrian refugees who are injured in that conflict. We bring them to Israeli hospitals where they can recover, and then they can return to their home. And we use our Benjamins to build civil rights organizations, because we know, as people there of different backgrounds know, hatred may start with the Jews, it doesn't stop with the Jews. This past week, a teenager in Israel, 19 years old, was victimized by terrorism. Do you know what she did? She was a volunteer with kids with disabilities, kids who were Jewish, kids who were Muslim, kids who were Christian, and she was taken away. Her mother said, my daughter's name is Ori. Ori means my light. My light has been extinguished. But I say to those who are listening, use your light, use your love to bring us a little bit closer to each other. So thus we come here today. Mr. Mayor, we will work with you and with all leaders to see to it that one day, at the end of the words never again, there will be a period and not a question mark. Thank you very much.
To conclude, I want you to hear from our elected officials who fight this battle every day, and I want to start with our host, Assemblymember Helene Weinstein.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for being here, for helping to highlight some of the pain that has gone in the hearts of my constituents. When I was a child growing up, my mother, who emigrated here from Israel, would show me photos of when she visited her family in Poland, and I would ask, where can I meet them? Where are my cousins? Where's my great aunt? Where's my aunt? And she would explain to me as I got older. I understood why I would never see these relatives. I never thought, growing up, and now as an elected official, that I would see such resurgence of hate in our community here, in our country. And then just Tuesday, it really brought home to me in a really shocking way. I was at a budget hearing in Albany, as the mayor knows, and my office sent me a text, and I opened it up thinking, oh, they need me for something. And the text was around the corner from my office in the snow, a swastika. And it just really shocked me. There were no words to describe it. And the snow melted, the swastika melted, but the hate endures in our community. I so appreciate the mayor, Chief Harrison, being here today to let New Yorkers know we will not tolerate hate in any form in our community. And one thing that I like to remind people when I speak about the Holocaust and the hate, to paraphrase a song from 70 years ago from South Pacific, you're not born to hate. Hate has to be carefully taught.
Well said. Well said. Thank you. Assemblymember Simcha Eichenstein.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are gathered here to send a message that anti-Semitism and hate are not welcome in our city, in our state, in our country, or anywhere on this planet. We must be clear. Anti-Semitism is sickening and unacceptable. BDS is a movement that's based on hate. The core principle of BDS is that Israel doesn't have the right to exist. And let's be honest, unfortunately, we have seen in our very own party disturbing examples of this evil rhetoric. But we as Democrats must move to strike down this hateful movement however we can. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your leadership on this issue. As a progressive voice, demonstrating unequivocally that to boycott the state of Israel is hate. We may not stay silent, so please join us in this fight against BDS and anti-Semitism wherever it lies. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Kalman Yeager.
I'm not going to use the cheating step. Mr. Mayor, you know me for a long time, almost 20 years, maybe a little more, and I don't think I've been without words, but seeing you stand here in the heart of our community and speak the way you did, and I know it comes from the heart, and folks who, we know our mayor, he's been the mayor for 5 years now, but those who know the beginning of his career, he represented a portion of Borough Park, the little village of Borough Park, as I like to call it, the community that has the largest number of Holocaust survivors anywhere in the world outside of Israel. And he not just represented with great distinction, but he became part of the family, the fabric of the community. And he, in his heart and in his acts and in every way he comports himself, is a Jewish New Yorker. And I am grateful for your service, Mr. Mayor. I want to say just very briefly, I grew up actually 3 blocks away from here. My parents were pioneers of a sort. They We're the second Orthodox family on the block. Helene Weinstein knows me since I was that tall. I was, actually. And when we moved there, I can tell you that we were not allowed to ride our bikes off the block. My yarmulke was frequently knocked off my head. Firecrackers were thrown at me and my siblings. Today, back then, this was one of 4 shuls in the neighborhood. This is a pioneer shul as well. Today, 3, 4 shuls on every block. There are hundreds of shuls in our neighborhood, also a pioneer, the Rav, and I appreciate everything you've done for the community. But we've grown, and we went past the point where somebody like me, my child, would be scared to walk down the block with a yarmulke, and then here we are today. And then there are parts in our city where people really are fearful. And Mr. Mayor, I do want to tell you that the response of the police department is fierce, it's unequivocal. Your leadership, the police commissioner's leadership, is incredible. There is not a question in my mind that our police department is on the job protecting us every second, and I am grateful for that. And I thank them, and we should recognize that the police had a loss in their family, and we should thank them. Every single one of them feels that loss. It's a brother. And we are grateful, and they are out there every day putting them in between us and danger, and I am incredibly grateful. And I just want to talk about that 77-year-old woman, my constituent, Simcha's constituent. When that swastika was drawn on her apartment door on Shabbos, and I found out about it Saturday night, long after the police had already done their great work, and I'm grateful again. And I got in my car Motzei Shabbos, and I went to visit her. And we spent some time together, and she's a great-grandmother. Her husband was a survivor of the Holocaust, lived in Israel for many years, came here, made their lives, raised children. And she kept on saying the same thing to me over and over and over again, probably a dozen times, in Hebrew, in Yiddish, and in English. Why me? And that was the question she had. Why me? She said, I never did anything to anybody. What did I do? Why me? Why did somebody come to my door? Because they saw the mezuzah? What was it about me? And there was no answer. And I don't have an answer, Mayor. I know you don't have an answer, but I do know that you're vigilant. I am grateful. The community is grateful. And you are a Jewish New Yorker. In your heart, I know that. Thank you.
As we conclude, I want to just tell a quick story that when Kalman was speaking, it made me remember very vividly. There was a Shabbos dinner, and it was Assemblyman Dov Heiken and his wife Shani invited me and my family over when I was a city councilman. And it was a very warm, engaging evening, everyone talking together, a spirit of brotherhood. People, obviously my family, the Heiken family, different backgrounds, but all in fellowship together. And my daughter was sitting next to Dov Heiken's mom. And at one point, she turned to us all and said that she had gone through the experience of the Holocaust, but she had not lost her hope. And I marveled at her, because she had an energy and a love and a warmth about her, no matter how horrible and how tragic and unfair everything she had experienced in her youth was. She had found a reason to still be hopeful. She had built a beautiful family. She was telling the story, and at the end of the story, she spontaneously rolled up her sleeve. And my children saw the number on her arm from Auschwitz. And that brought home to me and to them that this history is still with us. This danger is still with us. In the lifetimes of people walking the streets of our city, this most horrific act still lives through them to remind us of how vigilant we must be. But it was also a reminder at that Shabbos dinner that everyone must be part of the solution. We can never leave the Jewish people isolated and alone again. And so I say to all New Yorkers, If you hear anyone suggesting an act of hatred towards the Jewish community or towards any community, it's time to stand up for the values of New York City. If you hear that, you must act. You cannot be indifferent. You must be part of the solution. A true New Yorker stands up against hate. Thank you. God bless you all. Well done.